Memories. Support our fight to protect yours.
Well, Kiri, thank you very much for joining Memories. You have a story which I think is unique, and feel very lucky that I've had a friendship with you for so very many years. What a story it is. Let's, Kiri, start at the beginning. You were adopted at a very, very young age, and you went to a family who were themselves not well off, so to speak. And from that early beginning, you've run a race, like a very important one, and you've won a lot of Grand Prix in the process. What a successful story it is. When were you aware, Kiri, that you had anything in there in a voice?
I suppose when I got to London and I saw people looking at me and thinking, it was, you get a particular look when something's going sort of right for me and wrong for them. And you've most probably seen it when something is very successful. It's like a beehive around you. And I think that is when I discovered that something I had obviously something that was going to work.
Yes, but I was thinking more of the very beginning, because you'd liked singing from the very beginning. That seemed to be something, whether it be at school or and that of course happens for a lot of folk, but they don't end up as divas. When did you think that your voice was that wee bit better than anybody else's at an early age? I mean,
well, I suppose after my singing lessons, when I started age 14, I graduated through all sorts of areas. I didn't really go to a college. I learned privately all the time. And then I worked from 14 to age 18, 19, sang into competitions, won lots of prizes, got recognized a lot. And because I was Maori, I think that meant quite a lot. Being Maori today is even more important, but way back then we were just sort of being introduced as being reasonably talented, because the Maori education way back where I began was that they were never allowed to speak anything other than English in the schools. So that's why a lot of Maori people were held back in their education, that the schools demanded that they spoke English, like my father, who spoke Maori but could not speak English. And it was very difficult for a Maori to have education way back in the 50s and 60s. But then when I left New Zealand in 1966, Maori was the language was starting to be introduced. So of course, then we became more important in our community and our Maori upbringing. So we have a lot of problems with Maori still, but we have a lot of successes. I'd like to think we have more successes. And in my area, Maori was becoming my little so-called ticket to entry, if so to speak. I had a good name as well. I was born with Elizabeth, but I became Kiri.
Well, it's a very, very early age. I mean, you seem to be a performer. You seem to want to be on stage almost. And did that happen at school, or was that more at home?
At home, we didn't have television for many years. So my mother played the piano and I would sing. And she always had lots of big parties. And so I would sing at the parties, and I'd have a little stage, and I'd have a curtain, and I would come out through the curtain, and she would play the piano and I would sing from about age 3. So it started quite early, but I didn't recognize things as they went along as I became more formally trained. But obviously way back there, I could sing quite well. I don't pump myself up too much, because I look at a lot of people and thinking of how did she get there and I didn't get there? I hear that a lot. How did I get to the success I did, and how did other people not? So I always have that in the back of my mind, that I humbly think I did quite well.
But those early years were obviously very important, because they gave you a degree of confidence that you wouldn't have had normally.
There was a recording of me singing in a radio station, age 8. And I actually have a recording of me doing that.
Can you believe that? So your mother, she had this dream of you one day being a really top line singer. I mean, that must have been enormous for her to see you growing up to turn out what you became.
The interesting thing is that the moment I appeared at Covent Garden, which was the most unbelievable experience and debut that I had as the Countess in The Marriage of Figaro, within the week she was dead.
Oh my goodness!
So she was the messenger. She was my messenger. She put me where she wanted me to go, and then she left. I always believe those things, that my mother was the messenger to put me on that stage, and then she gave me the freedom to fly, basically. But it was a devastation.
Now, from a wee girl in New Zealand, Kiri, you suddenly got to Australia. Then you got to the United Kingdom. Suddenly, you were invited to go over to the United States, into New York. Tell me the story about when you really became the diva.
Well, when I was already singing at Covent Garden, and I was singing quite a lot there, and then an invitation came through from the Metropolitan Opera, and Jimmy Levine, who was a very young conductor at that time, invited me to come and sing Otello, which was just a cover role. I was to do one performance, or 3, I think, looking back at such a long time ago. And then I arrived in New York, having got a reasonable amount of fame in England and the continent. So I arrived in New York to rehearse and just sit around and wait for my eventual performance. So I did. But the thing is, the day of the dress rehearsal, which I had to attend, the call came from Metropolitan Opera saying, "Kiri, get here now, you're on." I went, oh my God, this is 11 o'clock in the morning. I had to go on at 2 o'clock. And it was a full broadcast, a radio broadcast, because we didn't have mobiles and television at that time. So I was on. It was like, it was like a bolt of lightning. And I was on the stage. I was singing the whole opera of Otello with one of the most brilliant Otellos in the world, John Vickers, who was God to me. And I sang the performance and made my debut and became, I suppose, an overnight sensation at the Metropolitan Opera. So I'd done it in England, and I'd done it at the Met. But I think it's the courage, it's the non-fear, or the fear of getting on that stage and doing what you have to do, like yourself. You get into that car and you think, you pray to God that you're going to make it to the amazing amount of laps like myself. And I made it to the end, got out and think, I'm alive, I made it.
But you just mentioned a car just now. Didn't you have a bit of a race to get to the opera house?
I had an unknowledgeable taxi driver who came from the Bronx, I believe, or somewhere. And he said, well, where is the Metropolitan Opera? I went, oh my God. And it's snowing. It was snowing, I don't know how many feet in New York. And I just said, just drive straight down there, West End Lane or whatever, Broadway, I think I was on. I said, just go straight down there and I'll tell you when to stop. And he did. I threw him some money and dived out in front of the Metropolitan Opera because he couldn't find the stage door. I wasn't very familiar with it. So I jumped out in front of the opera house and just ran and ran through crowds and crowds of people, and finally found the stage door, got through, pushed in, and you can't imagine how many people are at you. Your clothes are stripped off you, your hair's put in things, you've got a wig on, you've got clothes on, shoes on, tights on, and you're on. So it was absolute. It was a frenzy of people. I can't tell you how many people were in the dressing room trying to dress me at that time. Me trying to have something to eat at the same time.
But was that the beginning of the big time?
Well, yes, obviously, yes. I mean, I'd made it in lots of ways at Covent Garden, and I'd been doing Michaela and the Countess and Don Giovanni and doing all those things. But then, yes, just a few years later, I was at the Metropolitan Opera and then started singing all over America, in San Francisco, Houston, Chicago, all the different major opera houses in the world, and then just went on the freight train.
Was it about 1984? Leonard Bernstein decided to re-record West Side Story. That was slightly away from your day job, was it, or not?
Well, it was, but when I was very young, before I left New Zealand, while I was still studying, it was my dream to sing that role. It was my absolute dream. I couldn't wait. And when Lenny Bernstein wanted me to sing it, I thought, oh, this is heaven. Although I didn't know how difficult it was to sing. It was a very difficult part in all our voices because our voices are trained in another way. But when I heard that I was going to have that recording, I was just absolutely thrilled, so thrilled.
Who was the greatest singer you sang with, could I ask you?
Well, there were many, of course. And Jose Carreras, who sang in the West Side Story, was wonderful and charming and gorgeous. But I suppose the voice, and I love Placido because I've sung with Placido many times, but of course the voice that I thought was the ultimate tenor voice was Pavarotti. It was the voice. Domingo had a particular sound, but Pavarotti had that unique tenor, glorious, almost feminine sound to the voice. It was glorious. And when you stood next to him, he sang next to, which he did with me. I did Otello with him. I did other things with him and Bohème with him. But when you sang it next and you heard that voice right in your ear, it was the most glorious, glorious sound that you've ever experienced. It's still there with me.
So you sang with him.
Yeah.
In my world, there are some people you get on with very comfortably. And there are other very successful people that somehow or other you don't feel nearly comfortable with. What are you saying with him that there was that special comfort factor as well?
Well, with the three tenors, you've got to understand they are in a different world. Tenors are different. And they have people who absolutely surround them with adoration. But when you've got a colleague to colleague, it's different. We do love them very much, but we don't adore them. So we just have to work with them. But with them, they're on another level when they're talking to you. And you absolutely respect all of who they are, their grandeur, their celebrity, and their just everything about them. They're so far above you that they're up in the clouds in my eyes.
Well, they think they are, at least.
I think I think they are. Someone said to me, what would you like to come back? What sort of singer would you like to come back as? I said, I'd come back as Pavarotti, thank you very much.
What about the rest of your life? You've created a wonderful thing to bring along new young singers. Tell me about that.
Well, I started my foundation because there is not funding over here for New Zealand singers. So I thought, well, I'll start the foundation. Of course, Rolex was a major factor in the help with the foundation, and they've been helping ever since. We don't have dozens and dozens of singers. We just have a few. And
tell me the name of your trust.
It is called the Kiri Kanawa Foundation.
Yeah.
And it just mainly exists in New Zealand, and we have the Kiri Kanawa Foundation Friends of here in the UK.
Well, I'd really compliment you on that, to bring along new talent and so forth. Your success has been so enormous. I mean, you got an OBE in '73. When I got an OBE as well. I think 71.
Competition on.
and it went on. I mean, the commander of the Order of the British Empire in 82. I mean, you are the dame, the ultimate dame. That must have been a great feeling to get as many awards as you have. But the Dame Kiri bit, I think, for me is really the crown. I suppose, but then I get Companion of Honor, which is even more amazing. So, but yes, the Dame is lovely. To have that title is really more than special. And I mean, not that you can do much with it, but the thing is, it's very nice. The rest of your achievements, what do you? I mean, you sang at the Prince of Wales's wedding. That must have been a big moment for you. Well, it was a big moment, and it still remains. The most amazing thing is that more often than not, it's played quite often. So I'm there for a long-term history by the looks. I will always be there, which is amazing. And what about the people you've admired most, Kiri? Because of your fame, because of your success, because of your worldliness and performing around the world, who is the person that you've been most impressed by?
Gosh, there's so many, Jackie, and you're one of them, because you've become such a friend. You've been inspirational. You ask for advice from you. You've always been able to help. You've been more than generous in all sorts of ways. You're one of the people in my life that I fall back on when, you know, there's a question to be asked.
You've done it all, and I saw you in a Bentley not too long ago, which was pretty smart.
Not mine, though.
Not your car, but you were in fact
not mine.
Sitting beside Her Majesty the Queen.
Oh, no, don't mention that. That was a nice car. That was huge.
And that's probably the most impressive lady that I've ever met. So you, I'm sure, probably have the same feelings.
You have to say, Jackie, one of the highest moments of my life was to be told, Kiri, Her Majesty would like you to drive in the car to church with you tomorrow. And
wow.
It's like, can you imagine a bit of sort of a heart stop when it happens to you? You think, oh my God, this is the Queen of England, and, you know, one of the most glorious people in the world, and she sends a little message just across to you. Please be ready to go in the car with Her Majesty tomorrow.
Well, you were there. Kiri to Kanawa, a very big thank you for joining me. You know, I'm doing this basically for Helen.
Yes,
to try and get more people to support financially and every other way to try and find a cure for dementia. Your presence today helps that enormously. So Kiri...
Well, let's hope, Jackie, that all works, that because people don't forget dementia. Dementia is there for everybody and for all time. And we hope we do find a cure, my darling.
Well, Kiri, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your future life. It's just going to be as exciting, I'm sure, as what's past. So thank you a million times.
Thank you, Jackie. Lots of love.